The village of Wilno has a history of unique and fascinating tales. One local man carries on the tradition of storytelling and local folklore. Barney McCaffrey weaves fantastic tales from actual experience and local myth. These are but a sample of his stories.
This came out of the fact that back in the 60s, a Polish anthropologist who was in Texas at a university there was going to do his PhD, right? Now, there is a connection between Wilno and Texas because the first Polish settlement in the States is Panna Maria, Texas, right? So people from down there know about Wilno in Canada, right? And so he figures he'll come up to Wilno to do his PhD, right? And he goes around and he interviews a lot of the old folks back then. And he gets some of these wild, wild stories. And they like to tell ghost stories, you know? So he gets a collection of them, he puts his paper together, and the paper was called Werewolves, Goblins, and Vampires of Wilno. That was his PhD, right? So back in the 70s, maybe 8-10 years later, somebody at the old Ottawa Journal picks this up and they decide they're going to do a Sunday supplement article on it, right? So in they come, you know, the reporter comes in, I remember the article started off, as I pulled into these Chernogoria, these black Wilno hills, the sun was just setting, and there was a sign on the general store that said, Skleptowarowi spoczywczy. You know, so he's making the whole thing sound really mysterious. So Skleptowarowi spoczywczy means like a bargain basement and general store, you know, generally speaking. So, you know, so after that, some of these other media, including some of our local media, started doing things like sending cameramen up here on Halloween night looking for the vampire in the cemetery and thoroughly annoying the local people. I mean, because, you know, this was not really a real thing around here. You know what I mean? It was sort of a made-up story kind of thing. So I figured, okay, they're coming around bugging the people of Wilno. We need a little song to tell just who the real vampires are, right? So that's how the Vampire Waltz came about. It goes like this. From everywhere. They get right in your hair. They want to know what you do and say. But the only reason why they do it's for the pay. But come dear and take a chance with me. I know that you will be entranced with me. It makes a very good finance for me, for I'm a vampire. Not the kind that takes the blood from you, but the kind who will throw mud at you while we dance the vampire waltz. Reporters and movie men and anthropologists too. They come from all around to visit Wilno town. There must be something here that's good, but because they don't live here, they've never understood. But come here and take a chance with me. I know that you will be entranced with me. Makes a very good finance for me, for I'm a vampire. Not the kind that takes the blood from you, but the kind that will throw mud at you while we dance the vampire waltz. In the older days, you know, media were just seen as a pest, more or less. You know what I mean? On the other hand, you know, the local media, if they did things about an event, you know, a dance, an anniversary, you always got that. You know, your little local media serves a great purpose, you know. But like when your bigger media came in, it would depend. Now, say in the last 15 years or so, we've been getting people in who, like yourself, you know, they really want to find out something about the area, you know? So some of the local people have learned that, hey, this can be valuable, you know? So they've become a little media savvy, you know? So we have things now like our Wilno Heritage Society that has a website. Every time they do a little thing, they're off to the local newspapers and that, you know? And our Wilno Business Association, you know, many of them are immigrants from other areas, you know, and they've had a little more experience with bigger media and that. And so they know, you know, they realize that the media can be a very positive influence. It can be a very big help in building up our economy. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, we've had a number of stories and that done about the area, and most of them have been pretty good. You know, it's a long ways from, I think I mentioned earlier, the best damn fiddler from Calabogie to Caladar, you know, where back in the 70s, the local people weren't ready for this type of stuff. And besides, that was, you know, sort of a harking to the days of the past kind of thing and showing how rough it was and all that, you know. If it's done right, I think the local people can appreciate it. If you come at them with the idea of gee, you know, it was hard and it was tough and it was dirty, but wow, look what you've done for the area. You know, look how you've built it up and look how you've survived and look how your kids have come along, you know. You do it in that way, then I think they can sort of go along with it. You know? Again, I can't name names, but okay, back when I first came up here in 1969, and by 1970 I had a Polish studies club going at the high school. Now I'm half Polish and half Irish, which is one of the reasons I came to this area, right? Back in 1959, it was the Baroness of Madonna House who told me that this area was Irish and Polish, right? That's when I made up my mind I was coming up here, and I got here 10 years later. Right? And I started this Polish studies club at the high school, and it was coming along pretty good. But one of the girls, she was the senior at the time, you know, getting a little sophisticated in that. She was Polish back then, you know. She come up to me and she says, "What do you want to start this old Polish-Irish crap again for?" You know, so back then there wasn't much of the understanding of that. You know, the same kind of thing. I was writing articles for the newspaper back then, a column, and I wrote about the beauty of Ted Blank up on the hillside using his horse to plow with, and what a great environmental, ecological thing, because I also started an ecology association at the high school, right? What a great thing this was, and oh boy, I got hell from one of the big ladies in town. "Why are you writing about the old things like that, you know? We want to look progressive, you know?" So, you know, back then there wasn't that much of the understanding. I think now, 35, 40 years later, there's a lot more understanding of how roots are very important to people. And especially today, you're seeing a lot of it with globalization, you know, where everything is trying to be made the same, you know. And people are realizing just how important their roots are, how much their diversity means, their individuality, you know? And so there's a lot more study of it now going on, a lot more appreciation of the past and the stories, right? The stories are just, and the stories are so great. The Irish had, of course, the Irish were speaking English, right? So the stories that they brought over, some of them may have translated over. You know, I haven't heard too many really, really old ones of the old country, no. The Polish had another problem, you know, and probably the Germans too, because they spoke a different language, right? So their stories, any that they might have had from the old country, are pretty well lost by now, you know. I mean, if they didn't capture them back in the 1910s, they're probably gone by now, you know. But there was plenty going on around here among the early settlers to make enough stories, eh? Like, you know, I belong to the Ottawa Storytellers, and a lot of the city people, they tell stories out of books, and they tell them well. You know, they do very well with that. But I miss these stories of experience, you know. To me, that's the real life stuff. Back about 7 years ago, I did a thing at the Rockingham Church. I called it A Day of Real Folk Song and Storytelling. And we had about 4 or 5 local storytellers. We got 6 from Ottawa, and we had 1 come up from Apsley who was a Toronto storyteller, 2 of them actually. And we just had a great day. And I've got that all recorded. Hey, you know, I think I did 3 of my radio programs out of just that one day of storytelling at the Rockingham Church, you know. No electricity, all wooden church, you know. It was a really, really wonderful thing. And almost all of the story, I would say 95% of the story, were real life experiences. And to me, that's always the best type of story. You know, that's the thing that really people feel a part of it. That, you know, either it happened to them or it happened to their neighbor, or it happened to somebody in the community, and they really relate to it. So real life storytelling, it's, you know, that's the good stuff. See, what I've been doing with a lot of my songs, I've been starting to tell them as stories, right? Takes a lot less work for one thing, a lot less energy. All right, so let me tell you this story. This story is based on a real life experience. So let me tell you the story. Yes, a story I'll tell about the killers of Wilno. Oh, I knew them well. It was on a winter's day in '75. To tell you what happened may be worth my life. But I went to see them on the night before in a small shack near Wilno. And when I opened the door, there sat Sylvie Kudrowski and Benny Dombrowski and the killer, Eddie Prince. When we planned the killing for the very next day, by a coal oil lamp I had myself, they said they'd be with me, come with me. I put them all in my car the next day, and we drove away. Me, and Sylvie Kudrowski, and Benny Dombrowski, and the killer, Eddie Prince. Well, we got to my farm and we started to prepare to do in the victim. We took great care, because we couldn't let them know what we were going to do. We got out the knives, the ropes, and the butcher knives too, yeah. And then we circled slowly around them. And Benny, he grabbed a bit too quick. Oh, the howling and the yowling like to make me sick. Me and Sylvie Kudrowski and Benny Dombrowski. And the killer, Eddie Prince. We finally got him tied by a leg to keep him still. Then Sylvie sat down and said, "Oh, I think I'm going to be ill." I said, "We better do it now, right away." "Well, let's have a little drink first," the boys did say. The victim was a squalling, the fire getting the water hot, but we passed that bottle around and we drained it to the last drop. And then Eddie, he crept up on the victim in the snow. He had his knife in hand. He was moving kind of slow. But he plunged it in and he cut that jugular vein. And then he fell down beside him. He was feeling no pain. Me and Benny laughing. We began to snicker, wondering which was the pig and which was the pig sticker. Well, we started in to clean up that pig for the table, my wife and I doing most of it, and Benny doing what he was able. And Eddie, on all fours, up to the house did creep. Under the kitchen table, 2 hours he fell asleep. We told him what he'd done when we woke him from his sleep so sound. He said, "By the jeez, drunk or sober, you know, the boys from Wilno will do the best job around." Telling stories is important. I've adopted this area as my home. I mean, it's New York City to Wilno, which you're going to choose, right? No contest, eh? So, yeah, and I think I've almost spent more time here than in any other place I've ever stayed, right? Including my birth area, you know? So, yeah, this is home, and I've had a lot of fun here. It's great, you know, and anything you can do to sort of keep this wonderful legends and storytelling alive, great. Now, whether I'm a legend, that remains to be seen, eh? I think living legends are a great excuse. Hey, come, we're going to have a living legend. We don't have to pay him because he's a legend, right? Once you're dead, then you see, does the legend stay? Is it a real legend? Ah, we'll see. Yeah, who knows, you know. No, I don't think I'll ever be another Joseph Montferrand or anything like that, you know, or Mick Khan even, you know, but there was one of the first real legends that I heard about up here, Mick Khan, eh? I had maybe 4 or 5 of the old lads telling me stories about him. You want to hear that? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Now this is one I recorded on both on the Wilno Express, our second album, and on my Legends Return album. I put it on that too. And this lad was a stud horse man back in the 20s and 30s. And what he did was go around and make sure there were enough work horses going to happen. So he had this big stud by the name of Roy. And you know, I mean, there you go. There was a guy who told me about 20 years ago what the horse's name was, you know? And after I put out the recording, I was playing it up in Pembroke one time, and this guy comes up to me and says, "I hear you have a story about Mick Khan." I said, "Yeah." And this guy was maybe 35, 40 years old, eh? And he said, "Well, I'm Mick Khan." And I looked at this guy, I said, "The hell you are? You died back in 1940 or so, you know?" He pulls out his driver's license, he shows me Michael Khan. Then he laughs and he says, "Well, I'm his grandnephew, eh?" And he told me a story, which I never did get in a song, because I'd already recorded and I should put it in sometime, that his great uncle was a healer, right? For one thing, he was a bachelor. I think he was the one who told me he was a bachelor. And so then I realized this whole business about, I'd heard from several other people, how he used to get his big stud horse up on his hind legs and then box with him to keep in shape, eh? So then I realized, oh, he was a bachelor, he didn't have a wife to fight with, right? Ah, that was it. So this grandnephew of his told me, he said, you know, he was a healer. He said he had these big hands. And if somebody got hurt in the bush, put his hands on him and he'd say, "You're gonna be all right, boy. You're gonna be all right." And sure enough, in the morning, that cut or that bruise or whatever would be just about healed up, you know? So he was quite the lad, eh? And this is some of the stories. I put them together in this song. And, you know, like I say, I heard him from different old people around, eh? And the fact that a guy even remembered the name of his horse. Wow. Hey, down in the valley of Rockingham lived a man by the name of Culhan. Big and he was strong, he was very quick. Baptized Michael, but they called him Mick. Mick Khan of Rockingham. In the old days, he was quite a man. Fought with a stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. Yep, there, right. Come on, hey. Now and off with the stallion he would ride. Mick would sit in a cart behind. On that cart he had a little box. Box was full of his own moonshine. Mick Khan of Rockingham. In the old days he was quite a man. Fought with the stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. Yeah, come on. Yeah. From Cumbernair to Brudenell and down to the Palmer you can hear him yell, oh, I'm a man, a stud horseman, and I've got a stud who can make a land of Rockingham. In the old days he was quite a man. That was a stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. He stopped one night with a German family. Down in the Palmer he sat down to eat. Got horseradish one dessert he thought he took. I said, Nick, the German ladies can cook. Mick Khan of Rockingham. In the old days he was quite a man. Fought with a stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. Yeah! Come on, Roy! On the Rockingham Road, one dark night, Mick and a bear got into a fight. Mick hit him with his fist, knocked him dead on the road. Maybe true, I don't know. Mick Khan of Rockingham. In the old days he was quite a man. Fought with a stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. Mick Khan of Rockingham. In the old days he was quite a man. Fought with a stallion with both hands. What a man was Mick Khan. A stud horseman was Mick Khan.
So if you find yourself traveling the road to Wilno, be sure to visit the village and take in its rich history. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get a chance to meet one of the Ottawa Valley's most charismatic and captivating storytellers, Barney McCaffrey.